I want to start this webinar for the horizontal accountability in Asia. The several cases are already discussed last week, and this is the second one. And today we're going to have 5 presentations, including the case studies of Thailand, Pakistan, Nepal, India, and Sri Lanka. So in that order. So each presenter will have 10 minutes to report your research outcome. And then after that, I want to secure 30 minutes for the mutual discussion, because this is there is no designated formal discussants. Instead, each of you can ask questions or give some comments on the other presenters, including me, and the Professor Jong-mi will give some comments on each presenters. So that's the basic the order here. So let's just start. I think one more thing. So this is we plan to complete a kind of the book project here. So as a general editor for this book project, I want to have some minimal coherence as well as consistent across the case studies here. So for that matter, I also give some comments with regard to the book project, the purpose here. Okay, then let's start with our first presenter, which is Dr. Saiwalwadi Baruki, the case study on Thailand. So you have 10 minutes.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. Firstly, I would like to thank the organizer, ADRN, for organization of this seminar. The paper I'm going to present today is Making Horizontal Accountability, a case study of Thailand. It's the paper that I conduct in collaboration with my colleague, Lachawadi and Aritat. So I would like to share the PowerPoint, the outline for presentation, starting with introduction, methodology, literature review, and performance of the oversight bodies in Thailand, and also the performance, and then the recommendations. Starting with the 1997 Constitution of Thailand that mandate the specific organization according to the Constitution in order to establish the oversight body. We can separate the oversight body into 3 categories. The first one is judicial organization, which consists of the Court of Justice, the Constitutional Court, the Administrative Court, and also another one is the Supreme Court for the politicians. And the oversight bodies are the National Anti-Corruption Commission, the State Audit Commission, and also the Election Commission. And the last group is the consultative organizations, which include the National Human Rights Commission and the Ombudsman. All these organizations emerged and until now, so they are over 20 years old. So it's time that we should study about the effectiveness of the establishments of this in order to be the horizontal accountability system in Thailand. So the objective of the study today is to investigate the overall structure of Thailand's horizontal accountability, the role and evolution of these organizations, and then to study the effectiveness of the horizontal accountability in Thailand for development and strengthening of liberal democratic governance in Thailand, and also study operational system of check and balance by these organizations. And then to propose the recommendations in order to strengthening the horizontal accountability in Thailand. Methodology that we use documentary research and also the interview with some expert. And we have research questions. Firstly, is the existing checking system by executive branch, legislative branch sufficiently and effective to democratic governance? And the second one is the judiciary branch independent or politically neutral enough to check and punish executive wrongdoings? And then are oversight bodies performing well? So for literature review, we know that accountability is the mechanism by which individuals or group of people are held responsible for their acts and has become an important and debatable issues with democracy body. This is according to Bowen. And then for political accountability is the constraint on executive power and comprise the mechanism for holding an agent accountable and the means to apply sanction when the principal transfer decision-making power to an agent. This is according to Widem. And for horizontal accountability, it is the system of check and balance among the branches of government, where each branch holds the other branches accountable to prevent abuse of power. So it is the mechanism to ensure that no single branch become dominant or unaccountable. So this horizontal accountability system emerged in Thailand. So we can tell that since 1997 Constitution, we have the system, and we can illustrate according to this picture. The first group on the left is the courts. The courts consist of the Supreme Court, the criminal division for persons holding a political position. This is very important in order to check the politician. Then the second one is the Court of Justice. The third one is the Administrative Court. And the last one is the Constitutional Court. And the second group is the Parliament. The Parliament consists of the House of Representatives and the Senate. And then the third group is the government branch. It consists of the cabinet and auditor and Department of Special Investigation. So in the government sector, they have mechanism in order to check the exercise of the government themselves also. And for the independent organization, we have NCCC, that's National Anti-Corruption Commission, and Election Commission, Ombudsman, and also Human Rights Commission and State Audit Commission. This is the system of the horizontal accountability in Thailand. And let's see the performance of some horizontal accountability mechanism. Starting with the Court of Justice. This is the statistic that show the performance of the Court of Justice during the January to March this year. And we can see that the complete judgment go quite, almost half, 43.15% finished. And there's still some pending cases, around 56 to 85. And when we classify into various level of the court, we can see that the percentage complete judgment, the highest one go to the primary court. The lowest one is the Court of Appeals. Yeah, and there's still a lot of pending cases. So the next one is the administrative court. So this is very important cases in order to scrutinize the case, which is the dispute among the government sector and also the people and the government sector. And each year there are many cases come to the administrative court. And we can classify the category of the case into many sectors. The highest one is the general administrative cost, and the second one is the personnel cases, and the third one about environmental case. And the percentage of achievement, complete judgment is 46.4%. So for constitutional court, this is a very important court also because they scrutinize the case related to the constitution. So since this year, I mean, as of July 10 this year, there are 1,794 complete cases. And still there are a lot of denied cases and the case that still carry over. Some cases still carry over because it's not finished yet. And then another important organization is Election Commission. So there are many categories of the cases, starting from the Senate election, member of parliament election, local election, and other cases, as well as political party cases. So all these cases can be classified into criminal case, civil case, administrative case, and electoral case. And then we can see that the most important cases related to local election, this means the election for the local government, there are many complaints. So the next one is the example of the cases that go to the election commission, like the first one, the politicians, he has to resign from the position because of the disqualified according to the qualification of himself. So the election commission has decided to file a criminal suit against Mr. Sirajen Chakha, the former MP, because he has the qualification that cannot meet the MP qualification because of conviction of fraud. The second one is the civil case in Chiang Mai court. According to the election commission, he asks the politician to pay because the election occur, and after that the qualification, and the election commissioner found that the qualification of the candidate does not fit the regulation. So, and also the accusation of the vote buying also. So after winning being the MP, the election commission disqualified this one. And then another case is the administrative court. Administrative case about the giving the yellow card. That means the election commission announced to have a by-election according to the disqualify of the candidate. So another one is the mechanism that election commission use. They have the specific application. You see, we can say that the specific application is the like pineapple eyes, and until now there are over 1,400 downloads, and some complaint occur according to the application. After having this application, many cases submit to the election commission. And then another organization is the state audit. This is very important commission because they have to do the audit for the government organization, and there are many cases that go to the state audit also, like the complaint about the utilization of the public resources. And then the National Human Rights Commission. The Human Rights Commission is like the consultative organization to provide consultation to the government on the human rights cases and submit the report to the UN according to the human rights case. And so far, there are many cases that submit to the human rights. During the October 1st, 2022 to March 21st to 2023, the highest case coming to Human Rights Commission by electronic letter, and then come with the post. Some people send the letter to the Human Rights Commission via the post, and then the self-complaint, that means come to the office and submit the complaint. And there are the other mechanism also, like submit to the commissioner themselves, and then they have the human rights clinic in Bangkok and also in the southern part of Thailand, and also the website. The people also use this mechanism in order to submit the case to Human Rights Commission.
Sorry for interruption. Just please wrap it up in 1 or 2 minutes.
Okay. So the mostly case about to the Human Rights Commission related to justice right. And then the ombudsman, another one is the ombudsman. Ombudsman is very important mechanism also. 54% of the case are complete. And so the result, we find the result by using the Corruption Perception Index. Thailand score 36 out of 100, so it's not high. And according to the we are among the country that low legislative power and not high executive power. So it's very difficult to have check and balance among these two organizations. So it's a long way to go, but we achieve some certain point that the people knows this mechanism and they make use of it according to the situation. And so the people submit the case mostly to the election commissioner. Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. It's very rich, full description of the state of horizontal accountability in Thailand here. Okay, so let's move to our second presenter, which is Dr. Mohammed Habib for the case study of Pakistan, please.
Thank you very much, Kim. Can you see my presentation? Thank you. Hello, everyone. I'm not going to describe the definition and historical context of the horizontal accountability, as you know, all of them. Basically, I'm trying to give you a context of the horizontal accountability in Pakistan, historical context extremely. So the Pakistan, like many countries, has been grappling with the extreme polarization in recent years. This deep divide among various political, social, and ideological factions has led to increased tensions and challenges in the nation's political landscape. Furthermore, there has been a growing concern in Pakistan regarding the political victimization in the name of accountability. While accountability is crucial for functioning democracy, there are instances where in Pakistan, the state has been accused of using accountability as a weapon against their political opponents, which then lead to a perception of biased targeting. As a result, the genuine process of holding individuals accountable and the credibility of state institutions responsible for accountability is undermining in Pakistan. So this erosion of trust and credibility ultimately delegitimize the democratic process as a whole. posing significant challenges for the governance and stability. So now it is important for Pakistan to foster a fair and transparent accountability system that upholds the principles of justice and ensures the accountability measures not used for the political vendettas, but rather serve the larger purpose of accountability. Key institution of accountability in Pakistan includes legislature, which it composed of two houses, National Assembly and the Senate. The judiciary composed of higher judiciary, which is called the Supreme Court, and there are provincial courts in the 4 provinces in Pakistan. Other dedicated institutions like NAB, Auditor General of Office, and federal and provincial ombudsmen and anti-corruption establishments are there in Pakistan at provincial levels. So, accountability through legislature, the oversight is among the 3 key functions of legislature, which includes legislation, number 2, representation, and number 3, oversight of the ministries. There are many standing committees, special committees, and parliamentary committees in National Assembly and in the Senate. So there are other tools also for the oversight of the executive, which includes the legislations, resolutions presented in the National Assembly and Senate, adjournment motions, call attention notices, and question hours. And one of the major committee is the Public Accounts Committee in the National Assembly, which is responsible for the to check the annual statement of accounts of the federal governments. Other oversight agencies include NAB. NAB is the prime anti-corruption agency in Pakistan, which is legally charged with the responsibility of eliminating corruption. As I already told you that provincial anti-corruption establishments are also there at provincial levels. As far as the international reports are concerned regarding transparency in Pakistan, here is a graph from 2010 to 2020 that Pakistan performance was good from 2010 to it's increasing from 2010 to 2018, but after 2018 it is gradually declining since 2022. The main topic, which is the current status of Pakistan, current status and challenges of horizontal accountability in Pakistan. Nowadays, there is a case study, it is becoming a case study in Pakistan, the separation of powers between the trichotomy, the 3 key pillars of democracy in Pakistan, including the parliament, judiciary, and executive. So at this time, the extreme confrontation is between the parliament, judiciary, and the executive. And the reason is that the PTI government in January 2013 dissolved 2 provincial assemblies, Punjab and KP. This was premature dissolution. So the case was in Supreme Court, and Supreme Court ordered the Election Commission of Pakistan to conduct elections on 14th May. But unfortunately, this was not implemented by the Election Commission of Pakistan, and the Election Commission of Pakistan quoted 2 main reasons: that they don't have budgets and they don't have security forces to conduct free and fair election as per Constitution. The Supreme Court of Pakistan ordered State Bank of Pakistan to allocate 21 billion rupees budget for Punjab and KP polls, but the State Bank of Pakistan said they need approval from the National Assembly. So when the case was in National Assembly, the National Assembly refused to allocate this budget because government was of the view that there are weak economic conditions of Pakistan, and also they have the view that if the KP and Punjab polls conducted in May, how these 2 governments would fairly conduct the elections of National Assembly, which is dissolving in August 2013. So they was of the view that if the PTI government win in these 2 provinces, how can they fairly conduct elections after 4 or 6 months? So Besides this, National Assembly passed some legislation including Supreme Court Practice and Procedure Act 2013 to clip Chief Justice of Pakistan's suo motu powers and power to make benches under Article 194(3). So when this case of Punjab and KP posed in Supreme Court, so it was taken by them under Article 194(3), and it was suo motu action. So the government presented a bill in National Assembly and make it an act to clip the powers of Supreme Court judges. So the Chief Justice of Pakistan said the timing of passing these bills is controversial, as we are hearing the case of Punjab and KP polls, and you people are passing the legislation against us. So there is a confrontation between high confrontation between Parliament, Executive, and Judiciary now. Even some of the Supreme Court judges are also commenting on these legislations. So this was the current situation in Pakistan regarding separation of powers and the trichotomy of powers between these three institutions. So I'm going to describe some challenges to accountability by legislatures. Currently, there are 38 standing committees of National Assembly and 37 committees of Senate. And in Punjab, 21, Sindh 21, KP 36, and Balochistan 14 committees, which are responsible for the oversight of the ministries and executive. The average committee in National Assembly and Senate held only 5 and 8 meetings per year, respectively. So they are not much more interested to oversight the executives. In most of the 80% committees, meetings focused only on legislation. Less attention is given to the oversight and the public hearings in these committees. The other one is Public Accounts Committee. The main challenge to Public Accounts Committee in Pakistan is that Public Accounts Committee does not question the ministry how you effectively spend these funds which were given to you by the budget. And another one is a huge backlog of audit reports, around 21,000 paras pending for the last 10 years. The other main issue is that confrontation with of Public Accounts Committee with other institutions such as Supreme Court. Recently, Public Accounts Committee called the Registrar Supreme Court in a case, and he denied to come in the Public Accounts Committee. And sometimes they have a confrontation with NAB and other institutions, and sometimes they are prompted by political and personal considerations also. As far as the budget is concerned, National Assembly spends average only 48 hours in annual budget debate with very little scrutiny or informed debate. So unlike other legislation, finance bill is not referred to committees, so in-depth scrutiny is not possible. Like in India, they discussed the budget for more than 3-4 months. But in Pakistan, the federal budget is not referred to standing committee. So when you are not referred the bill to standing committee, how it can be discussed? So even data is not available on how effectively standing committees review PSDP and give recommendation to as per rule of the National Assembly. Another one challenge is to judiciary is one of the main reason is the pendency of cases. Approximately 2.14 million cases are pending in all courts of Pakistan. Another one is that undue criticism can be seen by the judiciary on politicians and state institutions, including executive and the legislature. Other one is that the alleged encroachment in domains of executive, legislature, and institutions such as NAB and COVID restriction case by the Supreme Court of Pakistan. The other one is that, which I already described, Article 184(3), which gives the power to Chief Justice of Pakistan to take suo motu on public importance. So the expert says that it is excessive use of Article 184(3) by the Chief Justice of Pakistan, like in the recent case of election in Punjab and KP. Here's the Rule of Law Index 2022 by World Justice Project. You can see that even in the Asia regional rank in Pakistan, 5/6. and income rank 30, 38, and global rank 129 out of 140. So it shows that the performance of the judiciary is very weak in Pakistan. Here's the graph, number of pending cases in all courts of Pakistan. It's from 2004 to 2022. Recently, 2.1 million cases are pending in the Supreme Court. Major challenges to accountability system in general. Credibility compromise in Pakistan as successive governments use this accountability and the institution for political victimization right from the in 1949. Also, the weak capacity to investigate and prosecute white-collar crime efficiently by the NAB or any other ombudsman and other institutions. The other challenge is that the limited scope of work by these committees and these institutions, like you cannot accountable judges and the army personnel through these legislation. Credibility of the institution like NAB is often questioned by the judiciary, legislature, and popular politicians because they, as I said earlier, that they already are used as politically. So what is the way forward to come out from these challenges? There is a great need of effective interinstitutional dialogue among these institutions, including parliament, judiciary, and executive. Also, the accountability process should be free from the influence of political and army military pressure. The third one is that avoid interference of one institution into the domains of other institutions. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. Very thorough analysis of the state of affairs in the Pakistan case here. So I have learned a lot, especially for the country has suffered from not only some institutional or operational problem, but also resource as well as the information aspects of the problem in terms of horizontal accountability. Okay, so let's move to our third presenter, the Dr. Tirupati Paliya on the case of Nepal in terms of the horizontal accountability. Okay, please.
Thank you so much, Kim and Dr. Lee and everybody present here. Morning. I am Tirupati from Nepal, and I am presenting the horizontal accountability status of Nepal. I just have talking points, so let me just say the talking points. I am going to talk about more of introducing of Nepal. I think going back a bit, history about Nepal is important because we need to know how the systems are developed in the first place. So going back, well, geography is like the Nepal is in between China and Nepal, which are the new emerging big economies in the world, and by that we mean we have all sorts of dependency on both of the countries and also the influences. So language here is Nepali, and our political development is not very long. It's around 70 years now, and the development, as in the sense that in the year 2014 of Nepal, that is years back, the Public Service Commission, the very first Public Service Commission of Nepal was developed with the help of the Indian specialists. So this is just the background where the system has started. So the next thing is, all right. So Nepal has its own constitution from 2015, and there are fundamental rights and constitutional bodies and the parliament and the three states of origin. So basically, the supreme agency that oversees the accountability is the Supreme Court. For the judicial system, we have three levels of judicial structures. The highest is the Supreme Court. It is situated at the federal level. There are high courts at the provincial levels, and there are district courts at the district level. But the structure, the governance structure of district does not exist. Still, there are 77 district courts in. Apart from that, at the local government, there is a judicial committee, which is composed of 3 members, and the leader is the vice chairperson of the local government. So moving next, so there is oversight through constitutional bodies. There are 2 types of constitutional bodies I would like to bring to your notice. So the first one is the commission. There are 14 commissions, including CIA, Commission for Investigation of Abuse of Authority, and PAC, Public Audit Commission, and the Human Rights Commission, Dalit Commission, Inclusion Commission, and Muslim Commission, so 14 of them. Apart from that, so the second one is the parliamentarian committees. So there are parliamentary committees which oversee financial issues of the government, as well as the inclusion and the human rights and so on. So there are separate parliamentarian committees. So coming back, the role of CIAA in overseeing the corruption and overseeing the government institutions and bodies. So CIA, there's few incidences, like the appointment of the head of the CIA is done by the Constitutional Commission, which is composed of 5 members, including the president and the prime minister and the head of the opposition and the security head. So there have been incidences. Like during the appointment of the last head of the CIA, the former government introduced a what do you call it? Okay, so they ruled out the sanctioning of the Constitution Commission provisions. So they reduced the number of people to agree for the appointment of the chief of the CIA to 3 members only. So which made it easier for the ruling government to make changes on their own. So these kind of political influences have always been worked here. So there are a few gaps and challenges in the overseeing of the accountability. Two things I would like to highlight. The first thing is the government, the state lacks a central coordination body which connects and coordinates all the governments together. Though it is designated to the MOFAGA, Ministry of Federal Affairs and General Administration, but the ministerial level engagement is less effective in the case of the levels of government. So that's that. At the provincial level, there is no body, no single dedicated body which can coordinate with the governments, province governments. And at the local level, there are district level coordination committees, but the constitution itself fails to empower the district level coordination committee, and therefore it is less effective in the sense it has less roles in bringing together the governments. So the next one is the World Justice Project. I've highlighted some of the points from the World Justice Project Rule of Law Index. The Nepal was listed 105 out of 126 countries. So there are a few components which Nepal has done quite good, and more number of components out of 8 which the Nepal has performed poorly, like poorly on corruption, definitely. Like if I have to cite the corruption perception index, Nepal was listed 110th out of 180. This is the information of January 2023, scoring only 34, which is less than 50, and projects poor corruption status. So, having said that, I'm almost coming to the end of my presentation. There have been few developments in the case of corruption. Recently, many big shots, big politicians have been brought under the scrutiny of the court. In the case of one of the biggest corruption of land acquisition of the Nepal Trust. So this is under the investigation, and in my revision of this paper, I will definitely include this. Having said that, so at the end, okay, I'll just take less than 30 seconds. So well, basically, our constitution gives us the enough room to come together and work, but the influence of politics into the state mechanism and controlling the corruption and overseeing the transparency, it's difficult, and I think the state and the government needs to bring together the civil society together to oversee this and rectify it. Thank you.
Okay, thanks so much, especially for keeping your presentation in 10 minutes. That's great, and I also have learned a lot about the problems in making your accountability mechanism work in the case of Nepal here. So we're gonna have some discussion for your presentation after that. Okay, so let's move to the fourth presentation about the case of India by Dr. Niranjan Sahu, please.
Thank you, Young Kim, and hello, good morning, everyone. Before I talk about India, I just want to say thanks to Kim Jung and Sukjung Lee for taking this very, very timely initiative, because I can see from my own sort of writing and sharing among the research community in India, this horizontal and vertical accountability thing is really taking a lot of traction here, because of a very strong executive which is trying to almost squeeze every other institutions which offers some kind of checks and on the state excesses. So this is very timely, especially for India. So I'll just give a sort of quick snapshot. I've done 5-6 slides, so I should stick to the time. Yeah. Okay. So is it visible? Okay. Thanks. Okay, just to give a brief background about India's political and democratic system, India is a parliamentary democracy, and we have a bicameral legislature, which has lower house and upper house. Upper house is named as Rajya Sabha, which consists, largely representatives from the states, and that upper house particularly is kind of a a house that offers a significant amount of check on the executive power, because it represents the states, and India has party system, which is kind of a multi-party system, in which a lot of regional parties which are dominated by regional satraps, they offer a considerable amount of check on executive power. So that legislative system, which comprises of upper house and lower house, especially the upper house, offers a lot of actually checks on executive power. And then we have federal system, which with 28 states and 7 union territories. India has one of the most complex federal system, in which power sharing has done at 3 levels: at the federal level, at the subnational level, and then the lower local governments level. So that they are also real some kind of check and balances that emerges on any kind of strong executive. And then the last thing that in the government structure is independent judiciary, which is very vital. If India's democratic system continues to thrive despite kind of strong executive and majoritarianism over the years, it is independent judiciary which has offered a significant kind of check on state excesses, and that's precisely the reason why actually I chose to study more in-depthly the judiciary system, because that's the probably only institutions among all the 3 institutions which offers some sort of a resistance to the strong executive. Okay, in terms of the accountability mechanism, I think the foremost sort of is the separation of power, which has been done very well in our constitutions. The framer of the constitutions in 1950, they actually looking at many young democracies soon after they take shape, they collapses. So they ensured that all the 3 organs, legislature, judiciary, and executive, will have very clear kind of sort of powers, and each one of them will also have a certain amount of powers that can actually prevent the others from acting sort of misusing. So in that sense, this has been done very well, the separation of powers, and judiciary and legislatures have significant powers to put a check on executive powers. But problem is with India's parliamentary democracy is that we have followed the Westminster model. So so the ruling party becomes the executive. So in a sense, actually executive and legislature, that separation that one witnesses in a presidential system doesn't exist. So that often actually creates a problem. So you can actually replace executive with legislature. So in a sense, that is where actually judiciary has to be really independent to stop any kind of state excesses. And then rule of law, of course. Rule of law is again very clearly defined in the constitutions, and boundaries of each organs and states, its power have been very clearly defined under different articles of the constitutions. And rule of law is something largely enforced by the judiciary by various actions. So rule of law in many ways put a restriction on the state excesses. So this is one very, very strong instrument of accountability, to check state excesses. And then judicial review. This is the most heart of judicial power, because judicial review ensures that any kind of legislations, both at the level of federal as well as the state level, if it violates the constitutions, the rules that has been set, then the judiciary can review it and invalidate the entire thing. And the judiciary, especially the higher judiciary, both Supreme Court as well as high courts, have done it in thousands of cases where they have put a check and declared many state laws which have gone against the precept of the constitutions as illegal. And then another sets of instruments we have are writs and fundamental rights. These are very sacrosanct. Writs we have mandamus, warrant, those 5 writs, certiorari. Basically, we have followed the British model, and they actually ensure that any kind of state excesses in terms of illegal arrest or detention, those kind of habeas corpus kind of jailing people, those who are defending the democracy or fighting against the state, its usurpation of power. That actually allows the court to issue writs on its own and protect those rights. And fundamental rights, of course, are very sacrosanct. Those basic rights, right to life, right to civil liberty, and free speech. All these are actually also something that judiciary gets the power to protect, and these are all clearly defined in the constitutions. Now, in terms of other instruments that have actually emerged over a period of time, which also significantly aids the judiciary, is the public interest litigation. Those who have followed American jurisprudence, they very well know public interest litigation. Is a kind of mechanism which allows people may not have any locus standi on particular common interest, but they can take up those cases to the court to fight on environmental issue, to fight for the underprivileged, to fight for those who are exploited by the states and those who cannot fight on their own. So this ensures that activist civil society groups to take up those cases, and this is one provision which the judiciary has done very well, especially after the post-emergency. Those who may not be familiar with India's emergency, which was clamped briefly in 1975 for about 2 years by Mrs. Indira Gandhi as the Prime Minister. That was brief period in which democracy was suspended in India, and when civil liberties, including right to life, was suspended, and that was a dark period of India's democracy. This was also, kind of act which was supported by the judiciary then because of, state pressure, the executive pressure. But this actually led to a lot of criticism of judiciary because this led to thousands of people getting arrested, detained by the state, and state misused the law brazenly. And after a lot of criticism of judiciary tried to recover its space and, reputation by acting, taking, public litigation, expanding, the fundamental right to life, right to, life, linking it to right to have a healthy environment, many things. It expanded and it created a litany of, rights, new rights, which actually has done very well to protect the marginalized group, the oppressed, and, the people who do not have the kind of, access to the justice system. So they have actually benefited. And one of also major innovation that judiciary has done over the years is it has created a basic structure doctrine in 1973 in a landmark judgment, Keswanand Bharati judgment, where the court actually, fighting against the executive, very clearly said that, that executive and legislature do not have the power to take away the basic structure of the constitutions, meaning, that federal system, separation of powers, judicial review, some of those issues like fundamental rights, this cannot be scrapped by any legislature. Any executive cannot actually do away with these things. So that some of this basic structure doctrine has ensured that court takes judgment looking at that constitution is supreme. No legislature, no executive, or no judiciary is supreme. It is constitutions which is supreme, and whatever constitution has said must be followed. Especially the core principles of the constitution need to be protected. So that has actually helped the judiciary to put a check on state excesses. And another very interesting thing that the judiciary has done to maintain its independence over the years is taking over the appointment. Earlier appointment system in India used to be like many democracies that executive used to appoint the judges. The Supreme Court, High Court judges are generally appointed by the President of India, and basically with the Prime Minister and the cabinet. But this actually led to a lot of time, executive putting its own people and politicization. So what judiciary did in the 80s is that, it actually passed a judgment based on public litigation that the appointment process of the higher judiciary will be solely the responsibility of the judiciary. And it created a collegium system, the Chief Justice of India and another 4 senior judges. So they decide actually, and that has led to significant improvement in judiciary, control over its own affairs. And in many ways, it manages the bench strength and many things actually. In fact, the Modi government in 2015, soon after it won the power, tried to introduce a National Judicial Appointment Commission to nullify the collegium system and take the appointment power back. But the judiciary immediately came back and they made that entire law invalid. So it's a kind of a tug of war which still continues, but the judiciary at the moment has the control over the appointment. And then this is a very important slide on which I'll spend a minute or two. But what is happening since post 2014, especially after Prime Minister Modi's party, after almost 3 decades of coalition government, India got kind of full majority, a government that got the full majority. And since then, what is happening is that the executive has become very powerful, and it has the numbers in the both Lok Sabha in the lower house. It can pass any bill with the support of friendly parties. So what is happening is that in many cases, that mechanism accountability which the judiciary had created and very religiously used to maintain is actually falling apart. And in many cases, it's on illegal detention, people being arrested and not given bails, and then many state cases actually which goes against the basic structure doctrine which I explained are all actually in many ways the judiciary is not able to stand up and stop those sort of erosion which is happening at a very steady pace since 2014. So in a sense, what is happening today is that we are witnessing that the judiciary, especially the lower judiciary, are becoming party to the executive, and the lower judiciary is almost being weaponized by the state to push its own interest in arresting opposition leaders, in jailing activists, and many kind of illegal activities that is being taking place. And the third thing is the Supreme Court of India, which used to act as a constitutional court, especially on the matter of civil liberties, protecting fundamental rights and those sort of separation of power, in the constitutions. It is also very grossly failing in many cases. In fact, a number of cases like citizens in 2019, India had a lot of actually agitation over a bill, controversial bill over Citizens Amendment Act. And that amendment which was passed by the government, which discriminates the particular minority group, is still actually not been taken up by the court. It is still pending. Abrogation of Article 370 determining Jammu and Kashmir, it's still pending. The court hasn't taken it off. And in thousands of cases, habeas corpus cases, violations, the court hasn't actually taken up those cases. It takes sometimes very selectively. And then
sorry for interruption. Just wrap it up in a minute.
Yeah. Just one more minute I need. And then one of the things that is happening is also is largely because judiciary's own weakness, which also makes it in many ways responsible for because there is mounting backlog of cases. That also brings a lot of criticism about what is the kind of access to justice. Justice takes decades actually even to get decided. Then the number of judges who have actually given judgment, for the state, for the party in power, largely because they get something, like incentive, like post-retirement benefits. So those things also has put a sort of a blot on judiciary, and there is also huge judicial corruption that is also acting as a major block. But one of the major things that is also happening, which is also impacting judicial independence and its effectiveness, is the growing politicization of judiciary. Because of the polarization, which even Pakistan is witnessing and many other states are witnessing, the polarization is so sharp that many judges are actually now almost, singing the pants of the government. And that is actually creating a lot of doubts about citizens, whether the judiciary is really independent and really neutral. Finally, in terms of way forward, I think over last couple of years, there is some sign of resilience coming back, and some of the individual judges are standing up to the executive onslaught, and they have delivered a very significant judgment in the recent times, which offers some kind of hope that judiciary will finally realize that unless it acts urgently, it will no longer remain a kind of instrument of accountability on state excesses, and it will lose its whatever reputation it had built over the last several decades. Thank you.
Okay, thanks so much. Yeah, I fully understand that the situation in India in terms of accountability, especially the horizontal accountability, is in a grave situation here. So let's talk about that later. Okay, so our fifth presenter will be Shannon Talayalatne on the case of Sri Lanka, please.
Good morning. So, Verity Research's study of horizontal accountability focused particularly on Sri Lanka's anti-corruption agency, which is the Commission to Investigate Allegations of Bribery and Corruption, which is also referred to as CIABOC. So this presentation will start with looking at the methodology adopted, and we will also look at the overall horizontal accountability mechanisms in Sri Lanka, and we'll be using CIABOC as a case study to assess the actual working of horizontal accountability in Sri Lanka. And this will suggest how overall accountability deficiencies in the country can be remedied. In terms of the methodology, our research was primarily desk-based, and we conducted a legal gap analysis looking specifically at conventions and international standards, including the United Nations Convention Against Corruption and the Jakarta Principles for Anti-Corruption Agencies. We also looked at the anti-corruption agencies of both Hong Kong and Singapore, which are seen as best practice anti-corruption agencies in the region. So our research used the UNCAC, the Jakarta Principles, and the anti-corruption agencies of Hong Kong and Singapore as a point of reference for the assessment on CIABOC. In terms of an overview of horizontal accountability mechanisms and institutions that are already in place in Sri Lanka, the president has the power to appoint commissions of inquiry to inquire into the administration of a government department. So, for an example, in 2021, the Presidential Commission of Inquiry into the Sri Lanka Customs Department was established, and this commission of inquiry was expected to investigate irregularities and allegations of corruption against public officials in the Customs Department. Presidential task forces, on the other hand, are appointed to achieve specific objectives. But in terms of both presidential commissions of inquiry and presidential task forces, we see an issue of militarization in the appointments made to these mechanisms. CIABOC is the main mechanism we'll be discussing today, which acts as the primary anti-corruption agency in the country and has the mandate to investigate and prosecute allegations of corruption or bribery. We also have the Financial Crimes Investigation Division, or the FCID, which was established in 2015 with a mandate to investigate corruption and money laundering. But there has been considerable executive influence over the cases that are investigated by the FCID. We also have parliamentary committees which check the executive, including, for example, the Committee on Public Accounts, the Committee on Public Finance. But since the members of these committees are drawn from Parliament, it is questionable how free these committees are from the influence of the ruling party. The Auditor General is expected to check the executive by acting as an independent auditor for the public sector and providing oversight of public sector finances. But there have been instances of special reports prepared by the Auditor General which highlight concerns in certain public authorities and departments, but these public authorities in turn exhibit very poor drive to actually investigate these reports further. Sri Lanka also has the Attorney General's Department. Now, the Attorney General acts as the chief prosecutor in Sri Lanka and has the power to prosecute members of the executive for wrongdoing. But the dual role of the Attorney General in acting as a legal advisor to the state and also prosecuting public officials for corruption creates a conflict of interest, and this position has been criticized. And finally, the judiciary acts as a check on the executive by acting to enforce the provisions of the Constitution if and when the executive acts in breach of the Constitution. But there have been instances of interference by the executive with the judiciary, which has undermined the independence of the judiciary. So our discussion in examining the existing horizontal accountability mechanisms has revealed some distinct issues, which I'm sure you caught. So we see executive influence, we see poor drive to investigate, and we also see parliamentary influence. And it's interesting to look at CIABOC as a case study to dive deeper into the workings of these issues. So the limitations we see with CIABOC can be categorized under three headings, which are gaps in the legal framework, a lack of resources, and low public confidence. So to start off with some of the gaps we've identified in the legal framework, in terms of the appointment of commissioners to CIABOC, the president appoints commissioners to CIABOC on the recommendation of the Constitutional Council. Now, issues of independence arise in the composition of the Constitutional Council itself, because 7 out of the 10 members of the council are members of parliament. So we see an issue of parliamentary control and influence over the Constitutional Council, and therefore over CIABOC, which is interesting because parliamentary influence was one of the key issues identified before across the existing horizontal accountability mechanisms in the country. The next issue is that the only eligibility criteria available for commissioners is that the commission needs to be made up of 2 retired judges of the Supreme Court or the Court of Appeal and 1 person with experience in law enforcement, according to the CIABOC Act. The selection process that's adopted by the Constitutional Council is not mandated. And so the fairness of the selection process depends on the individuals who make up the Constitutional Council at that time. Now, this is problematic because the lack of a transparent procedure gives the council the freedom to take any steps it deems fit in selecting candidates. In terms of our recommendations for this gap in the framework, looking at best practices, the selection process should involve a weighted assessment against set criteria. And so there should be eligibility criteria introduced, and the process must be clearly set out to ensure transparency. But it can involve calling for nominations from the public and an interview process, which are things that the Constitutional Council has done before. But published eligibility criteria and a published selection process is extremely important to create transparency and to allow public scrutiny over the appointments that are made to the commission. The next gap in the legal framework is on the Director General. Now, the power to appoint and remove the Director General, who is the chief financial and administrative officer for CIABOC, is vested solely in the president. And this is contrary to both Principles 4 and 6 of the Jakarta Principles, because an appointment that's made exclusively by the president is not a process that ensures impartiality, because it creates executive influence over the Director General. And again, executive influence is an issue that we saw overall in existing horizontal accountability mechanisms in Sri Lanka, and we see it in CIABOC as well. So our recommendation here is based on our research into best practices, which reveal that when responsibility for an appointment is shared between 2 branches of state, instances of one branch using the anti-corruption agency as an attack dog against another branch can be avoided. But similar to the recommendations we made for the commissioners, the process of selecting the Director General must be published along with selection criteria. And in terms of the removal, any attempt to remove the direct laundering. Now, CIABOC is not a law enforcement agent for money laundering, even if bribery and corruption are the predicate offenses, because this falls under the purview of the Financial Intelligence Unit and the FCID. But the anti-corruption agencies in both Singapore and Hong Kong have the mandate to investigate money laundering if it is related to instances of corruption and bribery, and CIABOC should be given a similar mandate. Now, a new anti-corruption bill was gazetted in Sri Lanka in April 2023, and the second reading was recently completed in Parliament. So our research took into account the provisions of the bill where relevant. And in terms of money laundering, if the anti-corruption bill is passed in Parliament, CIABOC would have the mandate to investigate cases involving both corruption or bribery and money laundering if they are connected to a single transaction. And this is an important change because Money laundering and corruption are closely linked, and expanding the mandate of CBOC to include money laundering would mean that the Commission is better equipped to uncover attempts to launder assets that have been corruptly acquired. But it is important that with this increase in mandate, CBOC staff need to be given suitable training to investigate money laundering. A further gap in the legal framework is the mandate for asset declaration. So while Sri Lanka has established an asset declaration system, the system is not completely effective. There are notable issues, including the fact that there is no central authority that is responsible for monitoring the submission of asset declarations. And the asset declarations that are submitted are not made public, and CBOC is not required to proactively monitor the overall compliance of public officials with asset declaration requirements. But under the new anti-corruption bill, CBOC is designated as the central authority on asset declaration. So what this means is that asset declarations need to be made to CBOC, and CBOC is required to verify these declarations and to initiate an investigation if they detect illicit enrichment. The anti-corruption bill also requires declarations to be submitted through an electronic system administered by CBOC, and this system will then publish redacted versions of asset declarations on CBOC's website. Publishing asset declarations can empower the public to scrutinize and hold public officials accountable for their financial activities. So these amendments are an important step in the right direction because they promote a more focused and streamlined approach to monitoring and verifying asset declarations. Moving on to CBOC's limitations that are attributed to a lack of resources. So another issue we identify is that CBOC's prosecutors are seconded from the Attorney General's department, and its investigators are seconded from the police department. And this is problematic because research findings show that in Sri Lanka, the police are thought to be the most corrupt sector. And so the public's distrust towards the police can extend to CBOC when investigators are seconded from the police department. And as we saw before, the Attorney General's department plays a dual role as the chief legal advisor to the state, while also prosecuting the state for bribery and corruption, which creates a conflict of interest, and it creates an appearance of bias in CBOC's prosecutions. So our recommendations are for CBOC to establish a robust investigations unit that's independent from the police, firstly. And in terms of prosecution, CBOC's legal division should be trained to undertake prosecutions independently of the Attorney General's department. And alternatively, an independent prosecutor's office should be established so that the state's prosecutorial arm is separate and distinct from the arm that appears on behalf of the state and defends the state. Another limitation connected to the lack of resources is CBOC's budget allocation. In terms of best practice budgetary allocations, according to Transparency International, the budget allocation of an anti-corruption agency should ideally be 0.2% of the budget, of the national budget. And this chart provides an overview of how this allocation, the allocation made to CBOC compares to the national budget. And what we see is that over the last 6 years, CBOC's allocation has continuously been below that 0.2% prescribed target. Moving on to the issue of low public confidence, another issue we identified is that there is inadequate investigation into complaints that are made, and a lot of cases that are filed are subsequently withdrawn. So the first issue is there is not a lot of enthusiasm and drive displayed in investigating cases, and this is an issue we identified before generally across horizontal accountability mechanisms. The second issue is that when cases are filed, they're subsequently withdrawn due to technicalities in how they were filed. And in terms of our recommendations to rectify this, the first would be establishing an external oversight mechanism to examine how effectively CBOC has investigated complaints. And inspiration can be drawn here from Hong Kong's anti-corruption agency, which has a similar external review body that is made up of individuals from the public so that there's direct public scrutiny of the anti-corruption agency's investigations. And implementing a similar mechanism for CBOC can create public confidence in CBOC's anti-corruption efforts because it would ensure that every investigation is carried out in a comprehensive and it's conducted in a proper manner. So the final issue that we linked to low public confidence is CBOC's low prosecution and conviction rates. So in this chart, the acquittals are displayed in pink and the convictions are in blue. So we see a general trend of more cases being acquitted than convicted for the most part. And specifically in the last 2 years, there have been high numbers of cases withdrawn. So again, here, an external oversight mechanism to examine why these cases are withdrawn would be extremely useful. So just to sum up, the main issues we've identified are that there are certain gaps in the legal framework, some of which may be rectified if the new anti-corruption bill is passed. But the overall issues we see in CBOC, like an opaque appointment process for commissioners and political influence over the Director General, and even the appearance of executive influence because of CBOC's dependence on the police and the attorney, then low rates of prosecution. These are issues of executive influence and poor drive to investigate, which are also seen across other existing horizontal accountability mechanisms. So the main steps to rectify increasing opportunities for public oversight, published eligibility criteria, and an external review system for how cases are handled. And these recommendations also suggest what kind of improvement is needed overall in horizontal accountability mechanisms in the country. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the very thorough the analysis, as well as with the focal point on the CBOC. We can see some comparative analysis with the Hong Kong's or the Singapore's anti-corruption when engaging here. Okay, so thank you very much, and
Thank you very much.
See you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you. See you soon.
This has been very